I spent over 30 hours recording myself slide from every note to every note on the violin. Now, why the hell did I do this to myself? Well, with all those samples, I put together a massive sample pack, which you can combine with other MIDI strings to make string arrangements that sound like this. And the reason I spent so long making this is because there's nothing like it that really exists. MIDI strings are getting so good. Labs, especially by Spitfire Audio, has some absolutely incredible MIDI strings. My personal favorite is their Cello Moods ensemble, which has a bunch of different cello expressions that you can play as a MIDI instrument. It sounds unbelievable and it's completely free, like everything from Labs. But here's the thing, as good as these all sound, when you put them into a really acoustic, vulnerable setting in your song, they just never sound real. That's because they're always perfectly on pitch and they're always just perfectly aligned, and there's just certain forms of expression that you don't have any control over. And one really big thing you're missing is the ability to slide from note to note, which is one of the most gorgeous things that string instruments can do. So here is what I present to you. 454 individual samples sliding between every note from G3 all the way up to E6. That's well over 2 octaves range, covering every interval, ascending and descending up into a perfect fifth. In my opinion, the best way to use these sounds is to layer a bunch of them up in harmony to create chord changes. And so what you can do with that is, as your MIDI strings change from chord to chord, which is typically the least organic and natural sounding part of a MIDI string arrangement, you can layer in the violin slides on top of those MIDI strings to get something that sounds incredible. And I've done even more of the hard work for you. I've created 60 different phrases in 6 different keys. These phrases are literally chord changes. So for instance, in the key of C, we have the 1 chord to the 5 chord. So as your MIDI strings go from 1 to 5, you layer in that sample and it sounds incredibly realistic. There's also the Essentials pack, which is completely free, that contains 30 different phrases in 6 different keys. I want to try to address as many potential questions as you guys may have in this video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a string arrangement I've made with some MIDI strings that are all completely free and my sample pack, so you can hear just how incredible this thing can sound. Okay, so we're in my DAW and I've put together this simple little arrangement of just a bit of pianos, 1 pad, and then some fake strings, upon which we are going to layer the samples. So here's what it sounds like right now, and as you can see, we have some of the violin slides at the beginning and at the end, but there's this whole section in the middle without them, and you'll hear just how much more empty these MIDI strings sound without the violin slides on top of them. So here's what the whole thing sounds like right now. Do you hear how it sounds kind of empty and less realistic here? So there you have it. These samples that I've used right now are the pre-built phrases, which a lot of these, I think, yeah, these 2 certainly come with the free sample pack. So all I've done is I've plunked them in at the same time that a chord change happens. So you can see here in the Labs cello bit. Oh, and I guess I should show as well exactly what MIDI strings that I'm using. This is a little free advertisement for Spitfire Audio. I really love in particular this cello mood. It's like my favorite fake strings, because even just on their own, they sound like this. It's really expressive. But what you'll hear is it sounds great until we get to the chord change. The chord change still sounds a little bit robotic. Listen to this. Because you have no control over the expression during that change. But the second that you add one of the violin slides over that chord change, and here we're going from 1 to 5, and so you add the corresponding violin slide phrase, it masks the change in expression that doesn't sound very real in that chord change. And then with this Labs violin, this preset is, what's it called? Swells Ensemble from Strings 2. So it kind of swells in a little bit, so it's a bit of contrast with the expression that's in the cello part. And here are the 3 together. So you can still hear a little bit of that robotic chord change from the cello, but it's not that much considering how it was before. So the free version has these phrases, but the full version has even more of these phrases, and more importantly, it has all of the individual slides. We have held notes, so that's every held note from G3 all the way up to E6. We also have ascending phrases and descending phrases. In total, there's 210 each of the ascending and descending, and 34 of the held notes. So that comes up to 454 individual samples, which is a little crazy and it's a little annoying to navigate, but it's totally worth it. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to fill in this middle section using these individual samples, and you'll see really how easy it is. So this chord change from measure 3 to measure 4, we're going from an F major 7 chord to a D7 chord, or D minor 7. So that's the 4-7 to a 2-7 in the key of C major. So what I'm doing when I compose these slides, and what I recommend you do to have the smoothest sounding chord changes, is to adhere to the principles of voice leading. So if you didn't take any nerdy classical harmony classes, it's actually really simple. Essentially, when you're switching between chords, you want to keep the intervals between each voice as close to each other as possible. So if you have two chords like these, the 4 and the 2 chord, which literally share 3 notes that don't move, you want to keep those notes. Instead of, like, let's say, we have this F held and this A held. We don't want to jump from an F4 to a C5 needlessly. We're going to hold those notes over. And other intervals that do change, like the F down to the D, we want to keep those intervals as small as possible. So instead of jumping from, like, I don't know, an A all the way down to a D, we're going to do that F to the D interval. There's a ton more specific voice leading rules for specific chord types and chord changes. So if you want to learn more about those, look up some kind of intro to voice leading video. So here's how my project's organized when I combine these individual slides. I have 5 tracks here which are linked to individual mixer tracks. So I have these 5 slide tracks which are all going to a violin slides bus, and then are getting sent off to a little bit of reverb. I just have a little bit of like tonal EQ on the bus as well, just to make it a bit brighter, because that's seems to be what sit best in this mix. Now you can do it however you want, but the way that I like to do it is I have one of the slides is going to be down the center, and then I have 2 of these that are panned hard right, hard left, and then the next 2 are panned a little less, and it just gets a nice full stereo image. All of the samples are recorded in full stereo to begin with, but you know, you can take a stereo file and you can pan it to one side and it'll have a really cool effect anyways. So we're going from an F7 to a D7, which means the bass is descending from F to D. And typically this slide 1, which is the one that goes down the center, or down the center panning wise, that's where I like to put my bass. So we're going to go to the descending slides, and we're going to pick F4 to D4, which is the lowest F to D interval. Now this little dip in the volume of the waveform, that is where the change in the chord is going to be. That's where the slide is, essentially. You can hear that here. So that little dip is always where you want to line up with the chord change. Now, these weren't recorded to a click. None of the samples are recorded to a click, because I found that after doing a lot of experimentation with recording some to a click and some not, this was the best way to attain a really natural sound. So you have to do a little bit of manual timing adjustment, but you'll see just how easy it is to do here. And doing this retains that really layered, natural sound. So we have our bass. Now we're going to add some of the held notes. So we're going to scroll down to held here. We're going to add an A4, which is a constant note that's held between the 2 chords. And we'll also add a nice high C6. So already sounding really great. Now we have most of the important notes of these chords, so we can take a little bit of liberty here. It'd be cool to get an F in the 2nd chord, and let's see what we're doing here. So we have, what's a cool way to get to F? We have an E in the previous chord from the, because it's a 4-7 chord. So let's do an E up to F slide. That will sound really nice. We'll go to our ascending slides. Let's get like a, yeah, E5 to F5 will be good. So yeah, it's sounding lovely. And let's just get one more for good measure. So we have D, F, G, A, B, C. Okay, so let's double the root here. Let's get a D on the 2nd chord. Let me do a C up to a D. Let's do a really high one. How about? So that right there. And that's our slide pretty much composed. Now, one kind of annoying thing you have to do is it's nice to manually adjust the starting times, because they'll Like I said, they're not recorded to a click, so they'll all start a little bit different. Sometimes it's nice to have that natural sound, other times you don't want it, but it takes 2 seconds just to go in there and add these little fades in. And here's what this new phrase sounds like. And there you have it. This is my favorite way to compose with the sample pack, but obviously you can do it any way you like. I really hope you guys consider checking this out, and thank you so much to those of you who already have. I put a lot of time into this, and it's really, really rewarding to see that other people are actually using these sounds in their productions. And some people have told me that it's like really helped their string arrangements, which like couldn't make me happier. So yeah, I really hope you'll consider checking these out, and thank you so much for watching.